Okay, so for those of you that don't know me, I'm Shruti. I'm a junior here at UCSB, and I'm the research coordinator at the Democracy for the People campaign. And so activists have been working to fight the disproportionate political power that our nation gives to the wealthiest people, while those of us without huge amounts of wealth must watch as our interests get overshadowed by special interests that we colloquially refer to as big money. We also recognize that the current electoral system we have, called a winner takes all system, makes it really, really difficult for our elected officials to best represent the entirety of their constituent base. The California Students Public Interest Research Group, or CalPIRG, started running our Democracy for the People campaign to help tackle these very issues. We know that election years aren't the only time that we should be working on reforming our democracy, and that even after candidates get elected into office, the work still isn't done. Our campaign's goal is to eventually draft legislation that puts stricter caps on corporate donations in local elections, as well as implementing ranked choice voting in Santa Barbara County. So to achieve this goal, we need to get enough grassroots support to pass the initiative. And a really critical part of this process is ensuring that the public is well informed on this issue. So that's why our campaign put together this educational panel of speakers that we're going to hear from today. So here today to speak with us are Professor Moosbrugger, Jim Lindsay, Dr. Skylarkovich, and Genis. We are also joined by Cammileri, and I think I saw Shane in here, Shane McLeod. And I'll let each of them say a few words to introduce themselves before we get started. And we can start off with June. Did you want to start off?
Hi, I'm a longtime advocate of ranked choice voting. I began many years ago working with an organization called Californians for Electoral Reform, which is now part of our broader coalition called the California Ranked Choice Voting Coalition. And we're working to bring ranked choice voting to as many cities as possible, with a goal of getting the 10 largest cities all using ranked choice voting to create momentum for statewide implementation of ranked choice voting. So that's me. I have no exciting credentials. I'm retired.
I also wanted to add, we're also being joined by Paul Copley and Steve Chessin. So let's hear from Professor Moosbrugger.
Well, I'm Lorelei Moosbrugger, and I am also a longtime advocate of ranked choice voting. My area of expertise is the political consequences of electoral systems. And I began graduate school really being mostly interested in how interest groups can influence politicians to subvert the public good. And so that's where I started. My book is on that. It's called The Vulnerability Thesis, Interest Group Influence and Institutional Design. And I begin that by talking about the evils of the two-party system. So I have been on board for a very long time, and I always include a component in my classes on ranked choice voting. And we just talked about it for all of my students. They know that are here today. They know about it because we talked about it on Wednesday. And I guess that's it. And there's nothing I'd like to do more than talk about ranked choice and the two-party system and how to get it. Do you want a popcorn? Do you want me to choose the next person?
I can go.
That'd be perfect.
Great. Hi, so I'm Skylerkovich, and I have my doctorate from political science from UC Santa Barbara. I studied with Dr. Moosberger in grad school, and her class might have actually been where I first heard about ranked choice voting. There was a class called Political Representation, which was both on American and comparative, especially European politics. And I taught at UC Santa Barbara and CSU Channel Islands. Right now, I live in Santa Barbara, and my day job is at the Braille Institute, but I also am involved in some issue advocacy groups. I was just appointed by the Santa Barbara City Council to be on the Advisory Access Committee. And I've done a couple of other speeches. I just joined California RCV a few months ago, but I've done a couple of these kinds of Zoom events.
Thank you. Let's hear from Jim. Do you want to go?
Hi, Thank you all for coming tonight. So I've been working on this stuff for about 30 years for proportional representation and ranked choice voting for CalRCV, and I've been involved in most of the wins that we've had in California outside of San Leandro. My city, Albany, just voted to use ranked choice voting, single transferable vote, ranked choice voting at large, and we'll be doing it for the first time in November. So we're very excited about that.
Good.
And so I'm a co-founder of the new California Ranked Choice Voting Coalition. I'm on the executive team of the coalition. I'm the director of local campaigns, and actually the Santa Barbara coach is Shane McLeod. So people were interested in helping to bring ranked choice voting to the city of Santa Barbara, the county of Santa Barbara. You know, Shane's there to help you and help connect you with all the things that all the help you can get from the California Ranked Choice Voting Coalition. And the other thing I do for CalRCV is I'm co-lead of the diversity, equity, and inclusivity team.
Thank you so much. Paul, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, let me go on video here. Okay, I'm Paul Copley. I am the marketing team lead for CalRCV. My background is in graphic design and advertising, and I got involved with this group at the launch because I thought they were just tackling a really, really important problem that I'm personally passionate about. And my wife is a Gaucho alumni, and I used to come up to Isla Vista and play gigs when I was in my 20s as a drummer. So I love Santa Barbara and I love UCSB. And when I got wind that this was happening, I just really wanted to make sure that I was able to, be a fly on the wall for this great conversation. Because I think that young people talking about this and being so interested in this is awesome and really important. And it's a really, really big shot in the arm to our cause. So I applaud you guys, and I think it's awesome. And also, Jim Lindsay produces a really great financial literacy newsletter that I get every month. It's fantastic. So if you're at all interested in that, you should hit him up because he's very modest about that, but he's a genius.
Great, thank you so much. And then Guy, if you wanted to say a few words, introduce yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everybody. Guy Cammileri. I got involved in the movement about 12 months ago. I'm on the advisory board at Rank the Vote. And through them, I met the great folks here at CalRCV in the lead up to the launch last September. I'm on the exec team there, and I focus in the areas of local campaigns, fundraising, and field operations. Over to Steve. Oh, sorry.
Yes. Oh, go ahead. Yes, Steve, let's hear from you.
Thank you. My name is Steve Chessin. My pronouns are he and him. I'm president of Californians for Electoral Reform. I've been a member of CFER ever since it got started. Jim was the founder. I don't have an official position with CalRCV, but our organization is one of the founding organizations of CalRCV.
So this lineup, you guys, is incredibly knowledgeable about their respective fields, as we can see, and I'm sure they're going to do a great job answering all of the questions that we have today. And with that, I'm going to kick off the first segment of the panel, in which I'll ask a few questions that the Democracy Campaign team and students in CalPIRG came up with. And these questions are going to introduce the topics of ranked choice voting, big money in politics, and the ways in which our current election system represses thousands of citizens from having equal opportunities to influence electoral outcomes. I'm going to read off each question, and all our panelists will have a chance to respond, share their thoughts. And while we listen to their responses, I'd love for our audience members to be thinking about what further questions they have, if they'd like a deeper explanation on any of the subjects we cover, since we're going to be taking questions from everyone later on in the panel. And before they start, it would be really helpful for the students to turn off their cameras just so that we can focus on the speakers that we have today. And with that, the first question is, what is the relationship between the winner takes all system and the two-party system?
Well, it seems I've drawn the short straw on that one. And it's actually a very easy question to answer because someone named Duverger, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, it's French, actually proved that the single winner system actually leads inevitably to a two-party system. I'm not a policy wonk. And so I think I would at this point like to kick it over to the people who are policy wonks, because I mean, I don't know how he proved it, but it is a known thing that when you will have a plurality, a system where the winner takes all, you will end up with a two-party system. So wonks, you want to jump in now?
And yes, feel free to just jump in. Yes, Jim.
Okay. I would, yeah, Duverger, I think is the way it's said. It's a pretty classic political science for people who study, election systems in political science. It's pretty classic thing. It's not that it's guaranteed, it's that there's a tendency in that direction. You can sometimes get two-party systems without proportional representation, like France. I mean, sorry, a multi-party system. France has a multi-party system without proportional representation. But generally speaking, there's a very, very strong tendency and a lot of push in that. So that if you want to have a multi-party democracy, pretty much, there are some exceptions, but pretty much you need to have some form of proportional representation, such as single transferable voting or party list or mixed member proportional, or the big three in the world. And if you don't have that, for instance, if you're just using single member districts, then it's extremely difficult to have a multi-party system.
I think I can add a little bit to that. It's Duverger's law. And the interesting thing about it is in social science, you don't get many laws. And in fact, this is literally the only one I know where we call it a law because it happens so often. And while it's not proven in a proof kind of sense, and like a mathematical proof, as Jim said, this is the way it turns out, except for a few conditions, like for example, Canada, where you have a concentration of French speakers that choose a party that's different. In France, you have a system called majority plurality. So if you have a majority, it's very much like ranked choice, except for on two sequential weekends. So if you have a majority that wins on the first vote, that person can be elected, but otherwise you go to a top two runoff, like an instant runoff the second weekend. And that's how you end up with these multiple parties out of single member districts. It's a majority plurality rule. And so, yeah, you end up with a two-party system if you have single member district plurality. And also, if you have presidentialism, you always end up with a two-party system because the top two vote getters for the presidential race are going to color whether or not a third party is tenable at lower levels.
Yeah, I'll add a bit to this too. So ranked choice voting definitely would be of assistance to third parties. I think if nothing else, because people who would support third parties, but do support one of the major parties over another one could have a conscience vote. So you could vote for the Green as your first choice, a Democrat as your second choice, and kind of be able to satisfy both reasons for voting. For third parties themselves, I think there's a lot more that goes into it in the US. And if the culture of researching all of the candidates who would be on the ballot, like in Maine, for example, we had congressional elections with ranked choice voting, and the independent candidates were not, a lot of people just didn't bother to rank them at all. So that culture needs to change. There also needs to be ballot access reform. It's very hard to get on the ballot for a lot of offices in the US. California is probably one of the easier states in some ways, but still a lot harder than in other first past the post countries like Canada and the UK. And then there's the culture around the third parties that we already have. So I think, as Dr. Moosberger alluded to, there's a lot of tension where some of the third parties that are around have a very radical vision of society. I think in the US, there are, it's kind of hard to build support for centrist third parties. And then a lot of the radical parties, like, we're not really sure that they would actually win elections, because it might be that a lot of people might not support their vision of society, even if they knew what it is. But there might be ways that they could be more pragmatic. There is a new centrist party in California called the Common Sense Party. I'm not sure if anybody from there is involved in our coalition, but it would be interesting to see what happens with them.
Yeah, as someone who is a third party person, I'll second that. Top two that we have now in California is probably one of the worst things for third parties because they never make it to the general election. We've had some strange instances where a Democratic district sent two people to the runoff, two Republicans to the runoff and things like that. But the biggest problem for third parties is they never get there. And that's all because of the wasted vote syndrome. People are afraid to vote for third party candidates because they feel that they would just be throwing their vote away since that person can't possibly win. So one thing that ranked choice will do for all parties is allow them to get a better feel for how many people really agree with what they're pushing. You can vote, what you can do with ranked choice voting is vote conscientiously. So you choose your first candidate based on the fact that this is the best person for the job. And then you can give lower rankings to people who you think, okay, they're just not as good as number one, but I think they might win. And I think that will be one of the major advantages. Will it elect third party people? I don't know, probably not. I think certainly not initially until people get over their fear of the wasted vote. But I think it's going to take proportional representation of some form before we seriously see third parties get involved.
Right. Yeah, I think ranked choice voting might have a bigger impact on primaries, like the top two primaries, major party candidates in those primaries, the presidential primaries, and then also the nonpartisan local elections.
Thank you. That's actually something that I was hoping to talk about. So I'm really glad that that came up. If anyone else wanted to elaborate a little bit, I know one of our later questions was how might it give candidates from outside the two major parties a chance to win more seats for higher up offices? And I know a few of you just touched on the possibility that they might not win these seats, but it would still increase their chances. And over time, once people get over that fear of wasted vote syndrome, I was wondering if anyone else had anything to add about how might we help people get over that fear that their vote is being wasted? What are some strategies, or like what are some obstacles that need to be crossed before they start confidently being able to vote for third-party candidates?
We found that when ranked choice voting is first implemented in a jurisdiction, that is a city, a county, a state, whatever it is, that we need to do some voter education. And extra voter education, strong voter education for elderly folk and for communities that have less education. But when that's done, and when people understand that you can just literally vote how you truly feel, that's your best vote is your true, sincere vote. It's very powerful and very freeing. And people do it. So all the exit polls and all the research shows that people do rank their ballot. But if you don't do decent education for the first election or two, then some communities won't because they just didn't get the message, or the message was not tailored in a way that made sense to them. It was tailored for the majority, but not for other folk. Then you do see sort of like people not ranking their ballot or doing things like voting for the same candidate 1, 2, 3, 4 because they haven't had the education and haven't had the support they need. But as long as they have it, they got that. There doesn't seem to be any evidence at all that I'm aware of that with ranked choice voting in a single district, that is a single winner election, that it actually helps third parties very much. The only thing you have is it does mean that people can say, you know, they like the Green or the Libertarian or the whatever candidate best, but they still don't win anywhere or hardly anywhere. It really takes a very high geographic concentration, say of Greens or Libertarians or something like that, or it takes proportional representation. If you want a multi-party system, realistically, you're talking proportional representation.
Right.
By the way, I'm pretty sure that there are a number of countries that use proportional representation and have a presidential system, but we can talk about that some other time. So they're not actually mutually exclusive.
No, and we can definitely talk, maybe even at the end or at a later time. But a lot of them are in Latin America, but they definitely do with different effects. But I think that that's a different story. I've read everything I can on single member district and on ranked choice in single member districts in terms of being whether or not it's difficult for people to understand, and I don't find that. Everything that I find says that as long as you have a solid education campaign, people find it easy to use, that it is not confusing, and they recognize the most important thing that June had talked about, which is that they're not going to waste their vote. They're going to be able to vote sincerely, and it's going to be able to count.
Thank you. Yeah, that was extremely informative. And I think that really helped clarify one of the things, which is people think, as soon as we implement ranked choice voting, now candidates from third parties are going to start winning these really high up seats, which, I mean, the path is not that easy. It's clear. Thank you. Shifting gears a little bit, another one of the things that we've been researching here at the Democracy Campaign is the influence of interest groups. And so my second question is, how would the role of interest groups change if we moved away from the two-party system, moved towards ranked choice voting?
Well, that one falls to me again. And I'm not quite sure what you are categorizing as an interest group. I mean, two people get together to talk about something and potentially you've got an interest group. Are you talking about, the big money that's going into campaigns or, okay. I don't really know how that would be affected. They would have to deal with more people because more people are going to run. That's one of the things we know about ranked choice voting, is that because you get rid of the wasted vote, pardon my cat, because you get rid of the wasted vote, more people who represent different interests are probably going to try and participate in the electoral process. We've already seen, we saw in New York, for instance, that more women were elected. That was probably the biggest test of ranked choice voting that's happened so far. And New York ended up with a Black mayor for only the second time in history, and an all-female, the majority of the city council is female for the first time in history. So we do know that there will be more people getting into the game, and what happens after that depends on how well they can sell their message. But it does increase participation, and the people throwing the money around, well, what are they throwing their money around on now? A lot of it is negative campaigning. A lot of the big TV ads saying, this guy is awful, you can't vote for him, you have to vote for me. That's all coming from the big money. And we know that generally, not completely, negative campaigning is greatly reduced with ranked choice voting, because the winner is going to need not only first choice rankings to win, but especially when you've got a lot of candidates, they're going to need second and third, even maybe fourth or fifth rankings from other candidates, supporters, in order to cross that majority threshold. That is one of the things about ranked choice, is that you must achieve a majority. There are actually some places, even in the state, I believe, that are still electing by simple plurality. But with ranked choice, the winner is always the person who has a majority. And I have to add a caveat there, majority of the ballots which have not been exhausted. Because if somebody, say we've got 5 candidates running and you only rank 4 of them and all of your 4 are eliminated along the rounds, then you don't have a dog in the show in the last round and your ballot has become exhausted. So some people complain that RCV doesn't really produce a majority candidate because of this exhausted ballot problem. But it's really no different than a top 2 situation where a lot of people say, oh, my candidate was eliminated, I'm not going to bother to vote in the runoff. So I don't really see that as anything critical. It will get more people participating, and the more people who participate, the more voices you're going to hear. And that's the important thing, is to hear more voices.
Thank you. Very informative.
I'm going to jump in real quick, which is just to say, I don't know of any evidence that interest groups like will stop existing. And an interest group is not necessarily a bad thing in this context. It has sort of a pejorative feel to it, but sort of a negative feel to it. But people think of the NRA. It's an interest group, not popular in California, in most of California, or unions, which is an interest group, which is popular among people who like unions and unpopular among people who don't like unions. It's like, but it's an interest group. It's a bunch of people well organized and with a lot of money and power. And I think my gut, I don't really know the answer to this. Maybe Professor Moosberger knows of somebody who studied this, but my gut is that they would still be around. They would have a lot more trouble dominating so easily. It's really ridiculous how they can just grab somebody in the Democratic Party that's powerful, buy them out basically, or threaten them or whatever with not getting elected. And because it's pretty much a one-party system in every state, then they can get what they want. And so if we had a multi-party system, it would be harder for them, but I think we would be naive to think that they're just going to magically go away. I don't think so.
Let me add that we've already seen that candidates catch on quickly. They stop the negative campaigning. The people who don't stop the negative campaigning are the special interest groups. That's the game they know how to play. And even though I don't know whether they don't understand that it potentially hurts them rather than helps them, but we've already seen a few campaigns where there was negative campaigning, but it didn't come from the candidates. It came from independent PACs that were spending the money on all of the negative campaigning.
Well, I can say a couple of things because this is what the vast majority of my research is on, is the relationship between institutional design and interest group influence. But I specifically am looking at interest groups. They can be on the left or the right, ability to subvert public goods, to get politicians to do things that the majority would not want them to do, just to clarify, because a lot of interest group representation is crucially important to regular voters. So I'm not negative about interest groups generally. So in my work, which does not look directly at the United States, but in other countries, I find that interest groups have more influence in single member district systems because the parties are not really accountable to their core voters who are going to vote for them regardless. The parties are really accountable to the small shifts in vote that make two-party systems so vulnerable to interest group influence. So for example, in this country, the way to think about it is that interest groups have their influence in their ability to primary candidates who are going to win in the general election in the vast majority of congressional seats that are safe for one party or the other. So somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of the seats in Congress, depending on how you count it, are essentially safe for one party, which means all the action is going on in the primary, where you have only the most activist voters voting. So somewhere less than 15% of the eligible voters in a district are going to vote. 30% of that party are going to vote. And so interest groups can really get a lot of bang for their buck if they're willing to primary a candidate. And so candidates will go out of their way not to be primaried, because once they get past that primary, they're pretty much safe in those districts. So interest group influence in PR systems, I'm speaking about proportional representation, is significantly less, and that's counterintuitive because we expect interest groups to be able to have a lot of influence where you have small parties because they're so important to those parties. But in PR systems where you have to have coalitions that make decisions, the influence of any particular group is actually less. And so you end up with those countries having better provision of majority preferred or public goods generally. So.
Thank you. I learned something there.
Great. Yes, I have a procedural question. Are we Do we have a hard deadline at the top of the hour, like at 7 o'clock?
We do not. I mean, if any of the panelists wanted to stay for even longer, we have.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can. I just
going.
kind of want to make sure that we get to the local organizing for Santa Barbara, part of this before the end.
Yes.
But yeah, I can stay a bit longer.
Okay, thank you. So that kind of brings us to the next question actually that we had, which was another reason that elections can be skewed against the favor of common voters is the influence of corporations, super PACs, wealthy donors. And how does corporate influence play into elections? And what are some of the consequences of letting wealthy donors freely give millions of dollars in contributions to the candidates of their choice?
I'm going to take the first crack at this one. First of all, I should know that this is not really a ranked choice voting thing, that there are two separate parts of the, well, there are more than two parts of the movement for democracy. And electoral systems like ranked choice voting versus single winner plurality and two-round runoff and things like that is one thing, and the money thing is another. They're complementary to each other. So it's not exactly our focus, but that said, I would say it's obviously a problem that, you know, bazillionaires can put in a bazillion dollars, you know, for a candidate they like, and you know, perhaps the people's candidate, you know, has $100,000 or something. You know, it's just kind of ridiculous. However, it's not automatic. There are quite often that it's not automatic that whoever has the most money wins. So I'm really like ancient. Like Moses was my, you know, my pal. So I'm not sure when this happened because I forget what decade it is. But some time ago, a candidate ran for governor by the name of Meg Whitman, outspent the opponent hugely by a huge amount of money and lost because she just didn't have the support. In the city of Richmond, I live in Northern California, right next to the city of Richmond. Chevron threw in a ton of money for their slate of candidates for city council because they were unhappy that the other city council was holding them accountable environmentally and other stuff. And you know what? They lost. So, you know, it isn't like money is automatic. It's an advantage. Any campaigner knows it. I've been in a lot of campaigns, but it's not an automatic thing. And often, hopefully you've learned the difference between correlation and causation, students. Correlation, so winners tend to be the ones who got the most money, but that doesn't mean that one thing caused, you don't know if it caused it. They're just correlated, they're connected. So what happens, it turns out, for people who've studied this stuff, is that quite often a company, for example, what they want to do is they want to have influence with whoever's going to win. And when it's clear somebody's going to win, and as the professor just said, the vast majority of the time you already know who's going to win in congressional elections and a lot of other ones, they give them money because they want to be their friend. They want to have access, you know, they want to have access to that candidate, to that legislator. So, and the final thing is, what can you do about it? There's a Supreme Court decision. It's going to be a long time before there's a Supreme Court that would overturn, you know, that law. So just practically speaking, and I'm a pretty practical guy, I used to work on this stuff with Common Cause. I'm putting my energy into ranked choice voting right now. And there is stuff that you can sometimes do locally, but a lot of times it has to be an option. I was part of that in a couple of cities, including my own, where there's an option, and you know it's publicly told, like, you know, who's restricting the amount of money they get or send, but you can't force it because of the Supreme Court decision. So it's a tough one. So anyway, that's my answer to number 3.
You know, I can't add to anything that Jim has said in that regard. You know, he's absolutely right. But I think that what I would like to do is an extension of that. One of the reasons that I so strongly advocate for ranked choice is that it increases the knowledge of average voters about what is going on, the policy that's going on, the issue, whatever it is, whatever is being voted on. because voters have a reason to listen to an alternative. Right now, voters who are on the right don't really have a reason to listen to voters who are on the left because they aren't going there. They aren't going to defect. They're not going to go over to the other party. But if you have someone who is going to vote for the Democratic Party and they could also vote for the Green Party, and the issue is about environment, they have to listen. And the politicians that are competing have to be able to speak to voters intelligently about those issues. And they can be held to account in a ranked choice, a subsequent ranked choice election. Same on the right. And so I think that what Jim is saying is that money doesn't always win. I expect that it, which is true, and I expect that when it doesn't win, it's because the voters know what is going on. And it's not because they recognize the name of, more citizens for, freedom for gun laws, the name of it, the organization. It's because they do know what's going on. So I think that one of the most important things about ranked choice is that it increases the amount of free information available to voters. It increases the incentives to become informed because you can do something with that information. You need to go into an election knowing if you're more than just a Democrat or a Republican. And so that is one of the things that I think is best about it and would be best for our democracy.
Thank you. And so I know it's 6:45, but I wanted to get in one more question from me before we turn to our audience. And so it's kind of a multi-part one. Feel free to take a crack at whatever part you like. So it is, how would ranked choice voting work on a smaller, so state or county level? And what does the process look like to transition from our current system to ranked choice voting on such a smaller scale?
Skylar, do you want to take a shot at this one first?
Sure. So most of the effort for California ranked choice voting is getting cities to switch to it. There are some cities called non-charter cities which are not able to switch to it. Unfortunately, Governor Newsom vetoed a bill, but Santa Barbara is a charter city, so it could switch to ranked choice voting. I believe, I'm not sure about Goleta, but a lot of the efforts are in Santa Barbara right now, just because I happen to live there, so I can better try and manage a local campaign in this city. And Santa Barbara tends to have more competitive politics than the city of Goleta right now. So the process, the usual process tends to be getting the city council of a city to agree to allow ranked choice voting to be put on the ballot for voters to pass. So that means after that election, all the elections in that city for city council, mayor, whatever, I think school board, whatever other offices there might be, that those will be done with ranked choice voting. And, one interesting factor is that a lot of cities have also been switching to, instead of having all of the city council elected by the entire city, they're switching to districts. So different neighborhoods will elect a city council member all their own. And so that means in some of these cities, there are fewer city council candidates for each district. But we think that with ranked choice voting, as someone mentioned earlier, that more people would run. Now, in a lot of cities, including Santa Barbara, the elections are nonpartisan. So a lot of what we've just been talking about with partisanship doesn't quite apply here, although there are definitely ideological differences in the candidates. And so I think a major example of where ranked choice voting might have made a difference is in the last city of Santa Barbara mayoral election, which was this last November, where essentially a more moderate, a more centrist candidate won, who some would say leans a bit more to the conservative side, because the progressive community split their vote between two different candidates. And so we have no way of knowing what the outcome would be exactly in that election. But actually, the Santa Barbara Independent actually endorsed ranked choice voting the editor of that. So what needs to happen next in the city of Santa Barbara, which I'm hoping that some of you could be able to help with, is trying to persuade the city council to provide an endorsement for ranked choice voting, to be able to get it a ranked choice voting proposal on the ballot in the next couple of election cycles. And so that's where I would definitely appreciate some help, because it can be a challenge to launch that kind of campaign when for so many people there's so much concern about labor, housing, environment, all of the practical issues, and so it can be hard to get people to spend a lot of time on this unless there's a big passionate group that's already doing it locally.
Tyler, does Santa Barbara have a charter review committee, or would it have to go, or would they do it directly through the council?
I believe it would be directly through the council, but I will. That is a good question that I can check into.
Because we did a presentation to the city of San Bernardino, to their charter review committee. And the result was that they unanimously recommended to the city council that they put ranked choice on the ballot for the city to vote on. So sometimes, and it's sometimes easier to work with the charter review committee because they're less partisan. They're often just citizens who volunteered and got appointed. They don't have an axe to grind, particularly other than the democratic process. So I would suggest you look and see whether that might be a path to take.
Definitely, thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a very comprehensive answer. And I know for a fact that many of the students that we have here today would be very interested in getting involved at the county city level. So I'm really glad to hear that. And I'm sure that we'll be in touch to see how we can help out.
Yeah, I can put my email address in the chat, and then you have it as well. We can follow up.
Fantastic. And with that, I want to turn to our students. And so this is going to be now the next segment of the panel. I know we only have 10 minutes until 7, but I'm going to be taking questions from the audience members. If you guys have questions about anything you just heard, feel free to use the raise hand feature, or if no one's talking, to just jump in, and you can direct questions to a specific panelist or just pose a question for everyone to answer. So if any of our students had any questions, now is your time to jump in.
Hi, thank you so much. The panel has been great, and like all of your answers have been very insightful. I have a question. It's for the whole panel as a whole, everyone here. But which places, either like whether they're cities, states, or even in other countries, which places have already implemented ranked choice voting, and what kind of effect does ranked choice voting have on their elections?
Jim, you want to check that one?
Okay. There are, in California, there are 4 cities that have been using it for quite a while: San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley, and a small city just south of Berkeley called San Leandro. And then there are 3 more cities that are due to use it in 2022. Albany, California, using the multi-member single transferable vote version. Eureka, California, and Palm Desert, although it's unclear if Palm Desert's going to actually be able to pull it off. In the country, there's about 50 different cities and 2 states that are using it, Alaska and Maine. So it's just a huge number. And then internationally, it's used by the countries of Australia, Ireland, and Malta primarily. To elect their national bodies. What effect does it have? Well, oh my. So one effect that it's had that we're proud of definitely is that you do get more positive election campaigns. That doesn't mean that there's zero mudslinging, but it's greatly reduced. And the reason for that is you don't want to annoy, you need to get, to win in ranked choice voting, you need to get number 2 and number 3 votes. And if you're going to go out there and be a jerk and attack people, you're not going to get very many number 2. You're only going to get your number 1 votes, your strong supporters. You're not going to get any help from anybody else. And so to change the way candidates behave and campaign managers behave, you have to change the incentives. You have to make them want You have to make it so that they're more likely to win if they're do the right things and less likely if they do the wrong things. That's the only thing that's going to do it. Because they're ruthless. Trust me on that one. So, and you get that. And with the other thing that we've seen is a noticeable and statistically significant increase in people of color getting elected. And at least anecdotally, but less statistically significant for women getting elected in the single winner version of ranked choice voting. There was a woman by the name of Wilma Rule who passed away some time ago, who did do some pretty impressive work showing that with multi-party systems, with proportional representation, that's really the way to get dramatically better representation for women and people of color. That was her focus. She did an awfully convincing job of it. Did that answer your question or not?
Yes, it did. Thank you. Thank you. That was a great answer.
Thank you, Jay. Do we have any other questions from students?
While we have a moment's quiet, I want to point out that in the chat, there is a link to a ranked choice election that you can vote in to see how it works. It's to elect the mayor of Animal City. And after you rank your candidates, it will take you through the round by round, to show you how the votes shifted between the candidates. So it's a good demonstration of how ranked choice would actually work in practice for a single seat election.
Yes, thank you. That is an extremely helpful thing a step that you can take if you're still kind of unclear on how practically ranked choice voting would work, what the process would sort of look like. That's something that I would highly encourage you guys to check out. And I'm going to ask one more time, do we have any questions? If we don't have any questions from audience members, I have one last thing that I'd love to hear about our panelists from. So if you have questions, jump in now. I will go ahead, and then of course, if anyone wants to stick around after 7, we can do that as well. I just wanted to ask to anyone that wanted to jump in on this, what are some steps that young voters can take to push for electoral reform when they're still in college?
Hey,
You could volunteer to be part of California Ranked Choice Voting Coalition.
right.
We need people all over the state to learn to be speakers, to go out and make presentations to groups that have probably never heard about ranked choice voting. Guy, do you want to post a link to the sign up?
Yeah, I'll post the sign up link. Definitely open a tab and maybe fill it out afterwards, so you don't miss the great panelists in the few minutes we have left. But I'll drop it in here and click on it, and please fill it out tonight afterwards.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Skylar, but then I have something I want to add on to that.
Yeah,
question.
so there's a lot of things that can be done online, statewide groups, even national groups, but locally, I think what would really help the most right now is to figure out a strategy for getting the word out. That can include tabling at public events, like poster campaigns around town, meeting with different community leaders and various constituencies around town. A lot of the tabling kinds of things, especially, are not really my strength. So it'd be great to have people who can help out with that. And then, of course, even if you think that you're going to be leaving Santa Barbara after you're at UCSB, you can still gain experience by volunteering here. And then you can also work for it in your hometowns or wherever you end up.
I was going to also add to that, Skylar. If you guys sign up in the notes section, just mention Santa Barbara, whatever. It'll probably show up there anyways. But we will connect you to Skylar and the local campaign. We also can
on the website.
Yes, on the website. And I'll drop the link in the chat again. But
okay.
We can also help you organize tabling events and farmers markets events and all that sort of thing. Our field operations and outreach departments. That's what they exist for. So let us know and we'll help you guys organize events there in Santa Barbara or anywhere in the state. But in this case, right now, Santa Barbara.
I was going to say that there's like, if you name a skill that you have, we can probably use it. You know, if you enjoy talking to people, boy, can we use you as a canvasser. You're standing out in front of a market or at UCSB, just between classes or whatever, and you're talking to people about ranked choice voting and you're signing them up to help with the local campaign or to join just sign up as a supporter so that they're getting information about it. You know, so, you know, are you a good writer? We need good writers. Are you a good artist? We need artists, right? You know, are you not afraid to ask somebody for money? We need fundraisers, you know? So there isn't anything, everybody can help if you know, where you have time. It can be a lot being a college student with classes, and a lot of people have to work part-time, and then trying to have a social life too. But if you do manage to find some bit of time, we'd love to have you. And no matter what, even if you don't have any time, you can just sign up as a supporter if you support ranked choice voting. And then you'll be, you know, maybe when you do get some time, you can help out. You know, we would absolutely love to have you. Part of the reason we formed the California Ranked Choice Voting Coalition is to do a generational change from the people who used to know Moses to people like you. So please come on in. We want you pretty bad.
Yes, we really need to get more young people involved. Some of us old dogs have been at this for too many years. We need young blood, enthusiasm. So please sign up and get involved.
I'd just like to add also, as the lead of the marketing team, that a really great way that you can stay involved with us is to follow us on our social media channels, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn, Instagram. All of our social media handles are at CalRCV, CalRCV, and we're constantly talking there about what we're doing. Any event that we have going on, whether it's a statewide meeting, we just had a great event with Andrew Yang and Rob Ritchie and Maria Perez that was really informational and fun. And then last week was our statewide meeting. And then in a couple of days, we have a fundraiser coming up. And we're constantly talking about all of that, as well as sharing really good information about ranked choice voting, things that are happening on the city, state, and national level. And it's a great way to get involved and just stay part of the conversation. And that way, when it comes up with other people, you know what's going on. You're on the bleeding edge of everything that's happening with RCV, and you can be a compelling advocate for us.
And I'd like to say one thing that is, not like that, other than Skylar, I have time to help you. And you know how to get a hold of me, and I'll do whatever I can to help you. I have time right as soon as the court is over in 2.5 weeks.
Okay.
So
do you live in the city of Santa Barbara?
The county.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so I'm here. But in terms of to the young people here, speaking as a mother who happens to know a lot about political institutions and the political system that we're in, this is not okay. All right. We are not okay. And we don't want this for you, but we cannot expect anything different out of our politics than what we have had if we don't do something to change it. And the number one thing that we can do is change to ranked choice. It is by far the most pragmatic. It is the easiest. It is the thing that people are going to be able to do first. And so what I would say to you, besides everything, all of the good advice that you've gotten about this particular campaign, is to recognize that you need to do something. Nobody is going to save this political system for you. This is on you. You need to do something. And so now you know something about it. For my students, you know a lot about it. And it's your job to get on your social media platforms and talk about it. Do whatever you can to inform people about it. Tell your parents about it. When I was your age, maybe a little younger, there was a big campaign to get kids off of drugs. And we had this television ad that maybe Jim will remember, where you had 2 eggs in a frying pan and it would say, this is your brain on drugs. All right.
I remember those.
Oh, yep.
And it would say, parents, you need to talk to your kids about drugs. It was an ad aimed at parents to talk to their kids about drugs. Well, kids, you need to talk to your parents about the 2-party system, because this is your world on the 2-party system. This is what it looks like. We're divided against one another. We don't listen to one another. And neither the Democrats nor the Republicans, no matter what side you're on, is delivering for you. All right. So and one of the, I think, best analogies here is the environment. This is the area that's near and dear to my heart. I know that many of you feel the same way. We can't keep talking about reducing carbon emissions by 6%. We need to reduce them by 60%. And we're not even beginning to have that conversation. And we're not having that conversation because we are dominated by two parties. So the first step, the best step, the quickest step, the thing that we can do is move to ranked choice. And so I just strongly encourage you to decide that this is going to be a mission for you. You're going to talk about it. Your friends are going to know about it. It's going to be on your social media. You're going to do something, one table event for Skylar and for the campaign, and move us forward. Because if we don't move forward, you're going to inherit this mess.
Thank you. No, that's very, very helpful. And I'm really glad to hear that you can use students with all sorts of skills, because I know that within CalPIRG itself, we do a ton of tabling, we do a ton of phone banking and reaching out to students one-on-one. We just finished our pledge drive to get funding for CalPIRG. So we literally have students with every single one of those skills. So I'm sure that some of them will be interested in doing work with ranked choice voting. And to the audience members, students, I will be sending out a list of resources with, all the things that were mentioned during the panel, so you guys can get in touch with the necessary people to get plugged in to initiatives in Santa Barbara and even Goleta. So I'm very excited to see students from UCSB get involved in ranked choice voting efforts. And I think it's 7:05, so I don't want to hold anyone for too long, but I want to extend a huge thank you to all our panelists for speaking with us tonight. I know that I've learned a ton, and I'm sure that our students have learned a ton as well. And I hope that you guys had a good time being here. And I want to also thank Ali and Jay, Mohammed, and Melissa from the Democracy Campaign for helping put on this event. And I think it was a great success. Like, we learned so much. So huge thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
7:06, don't want to hold anyone
Thank
too
you.
long. So students can start filtering out if you want to. And once again, thank you to all our panelists. And I'm sure that we will be in touch to learn more about how we can get involved as leaders of the Democracy Campaign. Thank you.